if you don't know what your savings rate is as a percentage, it's probably not high enough.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a group. There are thousands of boomers retiring who maybe don't have an heir apparent or they don't have somebody to purchase their business, but that's their retirement because they sunk all their money into their business. I can purchase the business, put the 10% down, get an SBA loan for the rest of the 90% of the business, and buy a business that's in place, that's already earning a profit, that already has all the players I need, and I can manage that from really anywhere in the country.
Net worth does not pay the bills. Cash flow pays the bills.
You're trying to purchase maybe mom and pop's places, service businesses that are already operational and have been profitable for years, and chances are make a lot of improvements in the business that makes it more efficient right away.
There's also the story of a guy who just held on to like a 10% equity stake and now is a billionaire many times over.
They believed in his vision so much that like most of them retired extremely wealthy just years later. The best way to go is persistence, right?
Start thinking about ways to focus on cash flow over net worth. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Remnant Finance. Today, we're going to talk about cash flow versus net worth, what we're learning, and possible ways that we're thinking about expanding. We want to have a conversation today about overall the idea we talk about of cash flow being superior to net worth as far as an actual financial strategy. And Brian has been learning about a new way of thinking about cash flow and possibly a new business venture. So we're going to talk a little bit about his his investing group in the Pittsburgh area, what they're working on. And then we just kind of want to talk through philosophically why we prefer doing something like that over, as you know, if you've been listening, why this idea resonates more with us than just your typical stock market investing. But before we get into that, what's new?
Dude, I was I'm still with the guard, and I did an overnight shift last night with just some awesome dudes, and it was wild. Like we got into some really deep conversations about life and kids, especially me and another guy there, and they're on alert. So, they're captive 24 hours, and I ended up staying up. It was almost like I was 23 going to a bar again. I was up till those hours. And so I'm operating on like 3 hours of sleep now by the time I had to get up and come off shift. But yeah, man, it's awesome. The whole point of me even saying that is how cool is it when you get around people that you don't have to have like boring surface level, like, hey, how are you, man? What's new? And dumb conversations. Like, man, we went deep on like family and all the good stuff in the 5Fs we talk about. So I'm tired right now. And when I'm tired, it's funny, one of my symptoms of fatigue is like words like hit my tongue and I almost stutter on them because like they just don't want to process for some reason. So I'm probably not at my optimal to talk, but it was worth every minute of it, just having those like deep discussions with other men. So pretty good night, pretty cool thing on Christmas break. So after we're done here, I'll spend some time with the kids. Good stuff happening. What about you? What's going on?
Not too much going on right now. Yeah, we just had Christmas here a couple days ago, and my in-laws are in town, leaving tomorrow. And it's been great having some of the family together. But I have a funny anecdote that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But when you said that you were on alert, something most of our audience being pilots, a lot of them will probably appreciate this. We have different stages of alert on the carrier and on other ships as well. But they run these drills on ships called general quarters, where you practice like the ship's being attacked and everyone goes to their battle stations. And for the most part, it's the boat people that do all of their drills, like fire extinguishing drills and flooding drills. It's just a drill series. And pilots, for the most part, you just go sit in your stateroom and play video games or read or whatever. We don't really have a part of it.
That's our God-given right to be, zipper suited sun gods. We don't have to do anything big, right? We get that. It's our privilege.
And so we have our ready room on the carrier, and some people just opt to hang out in there for the 3 hours or so, watch movies, do whatever. And we had a new guy, our FNG at the time. He got the call sign Detroit because he was dirty, he was broke, and everyone was trying to get away from him. There's a lot to that, like verifying those three reasons why. Anyways, so as kind of a new guy prank, I told him that during GQ, this general quarters drill, we have to man our aircraft in the hangar on alert, like we're ready to go. And there's different stages of alert. Like alert 60 means within 60 minutes you have to be off ready. From like the call is launch the aircraft, in our case the helicopter, the Romeo, to be off deck. Alert 30, you have to do that in 30 minutes. Alert 5 means you're sitting in the aircraft with the APU up and spinning, your rotor brake's on. All you need to do is just pull the rotor brake off and take off, right? So I told him that we practice like we play. So we always have someone down manning the aircraft in the hangar bay during sitting in alert 5 posture, simulated during GQ. And he didn't believe me. And I actually had our CO. I wrote up like a fake SOP, standard operating procedures, and the CO signed it, and he was on board with it. And so come GQ time, we all know what's happening, and we're like, hey, make sure you have your flight gear ready to go. And we're in like the South China Sea, it's 1,000 degrees and 100% humidity. And so he shows up to the ready room, and he's pissed because he kind of thinks something's weird, but everyone's so confident, including our CEO, that he's like, well, shit, I guess I got to do this. And so we're like, hey, make sure like practice like you play. Flight gloves on, sleeves rolled down, velcroed over, helmet on, gear, everything, right? We have like a 50-pound flight vest or whatever it is. And so everyone's running around when the sirens go off. Everyone's running their battle stations. We're just going to the ready room. And he goes down all the ladder wells into the hangar bay where the big part of the drill is happening for the ship people. And he gets in this helicopter in full flight gear, just pouring sweat. And we're like, hey, you have your checklist out, be ready to go. But obviously, you're not actually going to turn on the APU or anything like that. But just be ready. And we're like, hey, just a heads up. Part of this drill is people are going to be confused. But do not leave your helicopter. Like, this is your battle station for the entirety of GQ, which is like 3 hours long. Uh, and so we're like, dude, doors closed, scupper valves, everything. And so he's sitting in there just pouring sweat as the SWOs, like the boat people running the drills, and these chiefs are running up to him and knocking on the window, like, sir, get out of, what are you doing? Like, this, we're doing like like, we're spraying like flame retardant and stuff simulated, but like, you can't be here. He's like, I'm not leaving my helicopter. Like, I'm on alert 5. And he like, this whole hangar bay alert 5, halfway through, someone was like, they're messing with you, dude. Like, you need to go up. You need to get out of here. You cannot be here right now. So finally came storming into the ready room halfway through, just dripping sweat. And it was a great prank.
That's a great one. That's awesome.
Whenever you talk about alert status, I always think about Detroit and the hangar bay alert 60 or alert 5 aircraft. Anyways, not at all what we're talking about today. We want to talk about cash flow and net worth. And a big part of our paradigm is kind of shifting from the way that we're programmed, the CFP model of build this net worth. We've talked about it over and over and over, and we're going to keep talking about it because it is the foundational element of your typical financial strategy. You just build this nest egg over time, and then you switch at retirement age of 65, and you live off the interest of that. A lot of assumptions baked in. We've beat that to death, but we're, even though that horse is dead and bloody, we're just going to keep beating it. But our thoughts on the net worth idea.
The horse, you mean?
The horse. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Starting on a great foot here. We're going to keep beating that horse.
So before we dive into that, what's your shirt?
Oh, Currence. Speaking of,
I know what it is, but
yeah. So Currence is an app, and we're going to be talking about a lot about this in 2025. It's a savings account essentially, but it's a philosophical 180 on how people manage their cash flow. Typical mindset, you think you have two types of accounts, right? A savings account and a checking account. What do you do in your savings account?
You save.
What do you do in your checking account?
Well, you spend,
right? So like, it's psychologically, it's, saving, spending, saving, checking. You have no friction on the spending aspect of your savings and checking system. So almost everyone gets their paycheck direct deposited into their checking account, and then you have to get over some friction. You have to take conscious effort to save or invest that money, right? You have to actually go in. It's friction just means some clicks of a button, but you have to think about it. You have to plan, and you have to designate actual money, set the amount, set where it's going to save it or invest it, right?
And all that money that deposits comes after like all these gravitational things that we've talked about, like income taxes, if you do 401k contributions, if you pay healthcare, things like that all happens first. So you've already got this gravity on your income, and then what's left goes into your checking account.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get the leftovers, and then psychologically you have permission to spend that because there's just that barrier to doing anything else. And so what this app does is essentially flips it a 180 so that the money is deposited into what amounts to a high yield savings account, your reservoir. And instead of calling this a savings account, we call it a wealth coordination account. You're putting the friction in place on the spending part of those two aspects. You have to go in, and you can set recurring or manual, but you have to allocate money to be spent, and that would go into your checking account. It's putting in a middleman in a sense that makes saving the default and growing the default. So the average savings rate increase that they see is 600% when someone goes into this.
It's phenomenal. And what it does is it flips the script. So everything that you just described means like the money drops into the checking account, and most people unconsciously spend all of it. It's almost like if you think like, you know, caveman days, I'm putting that in air quotes. When somebody killed an animal, you had to eat it all. So you gorged, right? While the food was plenty, you eat because it might not be plenty for another few days. So it's the same, like we have the same psychological effect on our spending. So when the money is plenty, people spend it. It's just it's like a natural, I don't know if it's an American adaptation, but it's a natural behavioral condition of people. They spend what's available in their checking account. And the best way to look at that is I always think, but going back to when I was, 23 years old, and you'd have that one friend and you'd be like, "Hey dude, we're going to take a weekend off at the beach. Do you want to come, you want to jump in with us?" And they'd be like, "Hold on, let me check the ATM and see how much money I have." And they'd be like, "Oh, cool, $500, I'm in." They had money. They go, "Sure, I'll go spend it." Now that's like a really immature basis of when people would be like that, but it doesn't change. Usually it's just more money and a little bit more maturity along the way, and you have different fixed expenses, but the same psychological thing still exists where people automatically spend. And at the end, they try to consciously save the money. So they unconsciously spend what comes in, and then they try to consciously save what's left at the end of the month. And we all know how that usually goes. So Currence flips that script, right?
Yeah, and if you think about this, how I mean, we've probably all been here. We've all gotten a raise at some point. If I have it set up so that my monthly housing cost, rent or mortgage, is automatically being sent to my checking account from my Currence account, my wealth coordination account, to pay the rent, and then I have a certain amount allocated for these different expenses, and I have to go in, I have to use effort and manually get over the hump to get money out of that account, and then I get a raise. Well, typically what happens is people say, "Hey, I just got a 20% raise or whatever. I got an extra $1,000 a month." In the military, you can plan when this is going to happen. You know exactly when it's going to happen, but it's not like you really notice any difference unless you're very intentional about it. Because if you don't have a plan for that money, Parkinson's law, as Nelson Nash talks about, that money is just going to get consumed, and it's going to just add, once you have it, it's just going to become part of your spending because it deposited straight into your spending account, i.e. your checking account. And so you can capture those raises, you can capture a bonus, because if you do nothing else, that money just stays in this account where it's growing. And the rates are typically on par about with the high yield savings account. So right now you're getting maybe 3.5%, 4%, some wherever it's at right now. But you are harnessing that money without the risk of what normally happens. And if you just think of like your checking account as just this sieve, just a bucket full of holes with just money flowing out of it, that's why you don't see an increase in lifestyle when you get that raise and you get that bonus. It just goes out. It's gone, right?
One of the most common things that people like our age or in our age group say is they're like, "Man, I'm making," if you think, because we have a lot of military folks, they started off at the low end of the scale because it's always ladder effect regardless if you're enlisted or officer. You start off at the low end, and as they climb the ranks and they get their yearly raises, they're like, "Man, I'm making like so much more money, but I don't have anything to show for it." People say it all the time. And that's in every walk of life. It's not just a military thing, but yeah, it's like you're making all this more money and you're like, "Why don't I feel like I'm getting anywhere?"
Yeah. So harness that, harness raises, harness your bonus, and just harness the check that's coming in. Replace that leaky bucket with an actual sound bucket that holds the water until you decide what to do with it. It's a very simple flip. I mean, when we describe it, it's like, how is this not something that came out 30 years ago? I mean, it's very intuitive. Dave Mozica and Vince Dodona, the founders of this, I went to their conference in September, October of this year, and just it was awesome just kind of hearing how this developed, seeing the people that are using it, and the other advisors who have their clients using this app see such a huge increase in the savings rate. And a lot of the questions, when people understand IBC, they want to get going, and they understand, I need to capitalize this system. How well it performs for me is going to scale with what I put in. I'm just capitalizing. I'm building a business. So the more I build, the bigger I build the business, the more efficient is, not the more efficient, but the larger it's going to scale, right? So, well, I would love to pay all this premium, but where do I pay it? Well, people that are using Currents regularly and harnessing the money, and it stays in their system instead of leaking out. Advisors find that their clients never have a problem coming up with the money for the premium that they want to pay. And so it's a really cool tool. And it's not something that you can just go on the App Store and download and sign up for an account. You would have to go through a Currents strategist, which Brian and I are. And so we're going to keep putting that out. You'll see in our newsletter at the end of this month an article about that and a link. to get more information. But if you reach out to us and you want to get started on that, it's very simple. One step, one flip, and psychologically, it's going to make a world of difference. It's really cool to see.
I want to add one thing because I don't know if it was clear. So we're talking about making these raises, and let's say on average 3 to 6% is a person's average. If you're W-2 or salaried employee, that's your average increase year over year. So when that money drops into the reservoir, you consciously choose how much of it you're going to spend. So you set your spending baseline that drops into your checking account, and that's all normal wherever you already do your banking. So when you get that 6% raise, you might say, you know what, like I want to increase my standard of living for my family. So I'm going to take half of it and increase my spending that my family gets to take advantage of. So we can go out and do a little bit more and do different things. And then half of it stays behind. So imagine, go back to, regardless of how old you are, go back to the first bit of money you ever earned and imagine only taking half of all the raises you ever got, how much money you would be saving. And when you save that money and it builds up in that reservoir, you now have options. You get to a point and you're like, so what do I do with it? And like, Hans, you were just talking about paying premium, but you could do anything with it. You could put it into additional, like cash flow engines, things that are going to generate income for you that comes back into your life. So cash flowing mechanisms or cash flowing assets or whatever that is for you, or even if it is stocks and you want to do dividend paying stocks, or you want to do premium, or you want to buy rentals or put it into a business, but you're actually accumulating money where now you have the choice to build wealth with that money that's been left behind that you used to have an inability to save due to the behavioral norms in your life. It's fascinating. It's really powerful just by having one small shift. And man, just like we know in aviation, like you change 1 degree in your heading, over the course of 60 miles, you're a mile away laterally. So imagine like crossing the country. If you go from, on that 1 degree change, if you go from, you're trying to go from San Francisco to New York, like you end up in like Delaware or something just by changing 1 degree heading. So that one small shift puts you so far into a different direction. And this isn't 1 degree, this is a multiple degree heading change. And it's so easy. It doesn't impact your life at all.
If you don't know what your savings rate is as a percentage, it's probably not high enough. And the average savings rate is about 4% in America. Most of our listeners are going to be well above that. I think that people that are voluntarily listening to financial strategy podcasts are going to be above average on that. But if you don't know what percentage of your income is being saved, we can help with that analysis. But even if you don't know, the average performance of someone using Currence is a 6x increase of their savings rate. And if we and this fits in so well with what we always talk about: protect, save, grow, vice the typical model of grow, 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 and then maybe think about protect and save. You'd always hear about assets under management, right? And that's the typical model for the growth component. And most financial advisors are measuring the way they're paid, the way that they value the size of their business. Everything is assets under management, right? 1% fee. That's how they calculate everything, right? And nothing wrong with that for sure, because we all need to grow our money, and there are people that do it better than us. But if you think about what we focus on and where we position ourselves in the protect, save component, which fortunately the vehicle that we use, the whole life insurance from a mutual company, checks both of those boxes, the protect and save, the most optimally at once. And so if we're using that, assets under management for the growth component, what we would call income under management for the protect and save component, because having a ton of assets that are in the market, that's great. You have to figure out a distribution strategy, how you're going to take them, et cetera, how you're going to wind down that account and actually spend it. And then it becomes income at a certain point when it comes back into your checking account and to be spent. So if you could have a great portfolio, but if you don't have control of your spending, you don't have a pattern of saving and a habit of saving, you could have a very efficient machine here. But if your front office is a disaster, like, you could build this great business, but if no one can buy and sell, I'm trying to make a metaphor here on the spot, but your assets could be managed very well and growing very large. But if when you take them as income to spend, if that system is just a disaster, like you're reducing the efficiency of something else you're doing well. And so you have your assets under management, but your income should be under management too. And I would say that not only is that your paycheck and stuff, but that's also the distribution from your assets when you take that income. So
super powerful. Currence is phenomenal. I really like it, and it sets you up to do what you're talking about. It just sets you on a different trajectory. So for anybody, I don't care if you're 60 years old, I don't care how old you are. It's a great shift in that behavioral pattern. And if you're like 24 years old, Andy, this will change your life when you're my age.
And for those in the military, quite a few of our listeners, you can go into DFAS and you can change that. Like DFAS will direct deposit into your Currence account. In my last year and a half in the Navy, I was getting paid into my Currence account, and it's just awesome to see like this number goes up. I'm getting the interest on that, and then I have to make those conscious decisions. Just it's a psychological flip that's simple. I think it's $40 a quarter, so your interest is going to way surpass that. It's a great tool. Hit us up if you want to get into that, if you want to learn more, and we're happy to hop on a call and talk through it with you and kind of show you, what it looks like, what the portal looks like, everything like that.
We had no intentions of talking about that, so
Yeah, once again, we are failing on staying on topic.
it's good. We need that. It's good. I'm glad you're wearing that shirt.
Yeah, and it leads in and what we plan to talk about, which is business acquisition, and we're always learning new stuff trying to do this. And so I want to kind of interview Brian about what they're working on, because we never arrive at knowledge. Like we're still learning everything we can about whole life insurance, even though we consider ourselves well versed in that product. In the process of IBC, there's always more to learn. And so what are you working on now? Tell me a little bit about the group that you're in, what you guys are doing. And then once we get that, let's talk through kind of how IBC ties into that.
So what a few of us did, and a few members of our practice who are going to hear this episode, we formed kind of a local group. There's 10 people involved, and we decided like, hey, we're all doing our like, since there's a handful of people in the group practicing IBC, it was really good to talk about like, we talk about like, how can we deploy this money to make more money? I personally have rental properties that I've used infinite banking for. I've done hard money lending for people. And some of the things that we've already talked about that I'm not going to dive into here on a personal level, but it was like, so we thought, how cool would it be to come together? We had a bunch of like-minded people in the area and form kind of like an equity group. So we formed a 10-member LLC, and we all did an initial capital input that again came from the policy.
Everyone in your group is doing IBC?
Not everybody. There's some of us are, and hopefully a few more grab onto it. Matt, uh, that will continue to practice this and start to and see the value in how we flow money. But those of us who are doing it and are part of the group, totally like just grabbed a hold of the cash flow model right away, and they're business owners too. So it kind of fits. But we said like, wouldn't it be cool? One is there's that old philosophy, like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a group, right? Or go as a team. And it was like, well, what if we all could come together and then we can, we're sharing ideas. We're looking for deals independently. We all have our own networks, and we formed this equity group where we can start doing bigger deals with more money. And I mean, we're sharing the profits based on our share of the inputs. And at first it kind of started off as like looking at doing hard money loans again for different projects and local projects. And we're actually doing a really good deal down in Texas. So we're loaning on some real estate in Texas that's going to, it's more of a hard money loan type thing. And we're getting, it's all range. We're getting certain returns. It doesn't matter how the deal is structured, but that's going to cash flow back to us over the course of the next couple of years. But then a gentleman came to us, and this is where I'm learning and I'm diving in. So David in Canada, you know who you are. If you're listening to this, I may have some mistakes because I'm in the early learning stages of this. And that's what I want to share. It's kind of cool to share the journey as we go. A guy approached us and wanted to buy an existing profitable vending business. So the guy who's selling it has kind of just started in the last few years, but they're having some major life changes, moving across the country, and he can't manage this vending business in Pittsburgh from California. So a guy approached us who wants to purchase it, and the price is right. It's a good deal. It's instantly profitable. And he didn't want to tap into the money he had. So he comes to us and asks for a loan. And we decided to structure the deal as it's like, well, how about if we give you the full loan you're asking for, and we create a repayment schedule that is on a lower end of that. So part of that is just going to be an influx into your business, but then we're taking an equity stake in the business. So the deal we worked out, we're basically taking a 10% equity stake, and he's planning to grow this business into, really blossom it. And he's done really well in his other businesses. So we have full faith that he's also going to grow this business. So now we're using our money that I flowed through IBC into our equity company. Our equity company has purchased equity in this business, more or less. And now he's going to pay us back a handsome rate on like a hard money loan rate for the initial part of that loan. And then we're going to have an ongoing recurring revenue annually, monthly. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out as an equity partner in his business. He runs the business. He operates the business. He already has all the machines, he has the infrastructure in place, and he has the employees to make sure that everything's stocked and working and in working order. So it's always up kept weekly. Us as the equity partners in our business, we have no part of it. As far as the day-to-day operations, we're part owners, so we're there to help. We're there to help expand it because all of us go places. And so part of our deal is it's like, hey man, if we can find more places to put more machines for your vending business and create those leads for you, we can help expand this business as a small time partner. But until he sells that business, we have a 10% stake. And it's almost, it's 98% probably hands off. And so this is a business model that exists. If you listen to someone like Cody Sanchez, she's really big. She talks about buying boring businesses. There are thousands of boomers retiring who maybe don't have an heir apparent or they don't have somebody to purchase their business, but that's their retirement because they sunk all their money into their business. So if the infrastructure is in place, like the new growth model, the new thing that I'm starting to chase and starting to learn and study a little bit is how can I go about this in one of two different ways, or how can I equity group, or how can even you and I, or just me individually, two ways we can go about this. I can purchase the business, use our policies to take a policy loan. I can put the 10% down, get an SBA loan for the rest of the 90% of the business, and buy a business that's in place, that's already earning a profit, that already has all the players I need, and I can manage that from really anywhere in the country if you're buying the right business. And that's the thing I'm learning about is like, what are the best types of businesses for this to work? I don't know yet, but it's there, it exists, and people are making money doing it. So if I do it that way, now I own the business with just a 10% down. The other cool side of that, which I'm really interested in because we're running this business, we have a lot going on, beyond just remnant finance, and we're trying to grow this into the premier agency to operate infinite banking. So as we're growing this business, like it's taking a lot of attention, a lot of time, and we need to do that to serve our customers right. So what if we could find businesses that other people want to buy and they're looking for a 10% injection so they can get the SBA loan or the down payment to purchase the business, and we continue to buy equity stakes. So that vending business was like the first small business that we're in. And it's just kind of like opened eyes to a whole world of like, oh my goodness, like the financiers, the bank is the person who makes the money. And if we can be the bank and we can almost in like, we're more like a minnow tank, not a shark tank, but in shark tank fashion, that's why those guys do that. They always ask for equity in the businesses. And it's really open to everybody. Like you don't have to be a multimillionaire or a billionaire like those guys sitting in that panel. You could be a school teacher. And if you've saved money through a mechanism like Currence, and then you've properly saved it, you've corrected your savings habit with something like Currence, and then you've paid premiums. So now you have the optimal place to actually save those dollars and to optimize them for your use. You can be the 10% person that starts buying equity in other companies. And man, it's like the world's like endless, and it's such a cool thing to learn. I'm really excited about it. Don't know where it's going to go, what it's going to do, but the infinite banking concept, like there are so many ways that we can generate and expand wealth for ourselves and our families.
And that's not something that when you went into infinite banking 6-ish years ago that you ever thought, I'm guessing that you thought about doing. Same way that, the real estate syndicate and the rental properties, the turnkeys. If you go back to our episode with Shane a couple of weeks ago about how we're using our cash or our cash value through IBC to acquire rental properties. That was not on my radar when I started IBC. I was excited about just doing IBC itself. And so, they say that, the illustration only shows you what the policy can do. It can't show you what you can do beyond that. And again, to counter the most common objection that people have to this, which is always the incorrect comparison of saving versus investing, they say, why would I do this when I could invest and make more? This is just further hammering down the idea that we are investing, we are doing more, we are making more outside of the policy, but by flowing it in first, like we talked about, the protection and savings components are there. And this is cool because the net worth doesn't pay the bills, right? You have your monthly requirement, you have your monthly nut, whatever you want to call it, the amount that you need as far as like actual required costs, that's not really going to change. And then you have the amount you want for your lifestyle, but whatever you determine your monthly requirement is for cash flow, we're putting things together, call it like a cash flow stack or whatever. Ideally, you want these cash flow opportunities to meet and then surpass that monthly requirement. And that might be what some people call financial freedom. Some people call it twice that. Whatever it is, thinking in terms of cash flow and prioritizing cash flow is a great mindset shift to make over just valuing this future net worth at 65 number, because again, net worth does not pay the bills. Cash flow pays the bills.
Cash flow pays the bills. And what's cool is thinking now in this vein, if I can, or if we, or, you as the listener can start to pick up equity positions or start to just purchase businesses, boring businesses. They don't have to, you're not trying to purchase SpaceX. You're trying to purchase maybe mom and pop's places, service businesses that are already operational and have been profitable for years. And chances are make a lot of improvements in the business that makes it more efficient right away. By doing that and taking one of those two places, like we're taking this equity position in this small vending company. It's not anything that's going to like knock your socks off, right? But while we think and we trust that he's going to grow this business, my cash flow grows with that because our 10% goes. If he ends up having 200 machines out there, every machine, my cash flow grows with it by 10% of what he brings in. Phenomenal. So it's an ever potentially, not maybe not ever, but that's the place you have to do your own risk assessment, but it's an increasing cash flow basis. And there's no reason we can't do 10 of these just by cycling money through the right system with the right mindset about cash flow.
Yeah, and you hear stories. I read this recently, and I can't remember the specific example, so I'm gonna make something up. But you hear pretty regularly stories about, oh, can you believe this guy sold this company for X amount, and look what it's worth now? It was Windows. It was Bill Gates, what Paul Allen, and then a third guy that nobody can name. It might not even be Paul Allen. I can't. I don't really care about Bill Gates. I don't care about Windows too much. But the point was like one of the guys sold a giant chunk of his shares.
It was Ronald Wayne with Apple. He started it with Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, and Ronald Wayne initially.
So like, and again, the details are gonna be wrong on here, but maybe someone sold their chunk of equity, they sold their shares, whatever, and got a nice payout. But if you look back, would you do that again? No, of course not, because it's gone up, a million times return of what you sold it for, right? But there's also this story of a guy who just held on to like a 10% equity stake and now is a billionaire many times over, and that might have been Microsoft. I can't, again, these details are not correct, but it's just the idea that how many people sold for a chunk of money, net worth, and gave up an equity stake, cash flow. One way of thinking about it. It's just it's a recurring thing that you hear when you read about like the start and exit of businesses. And so the idea of that resonates with me a lot, of the idea of ensuring that you keep an equity stake. It's just powerful, and that grows beyond just a static number that you sell for.
It really is like you can go back and find with Amazon the initial interviews with Bezos or early on interviews where they were cash flow negative for years, like when they started as a bookstore. But his vision was so great that the people who were working for him, he was paying them like peanuts. But he continued to pay them in shares of the company, and they believed in his vision so much that like most of them retired extremely wealthy just years later. It started in the 90s, and by the mid 2000s, they were all retired. The people who believed in his vision and just kept taking equity in the company because he didn't have the cash flow to pay them more. But they believed in him. And so that they actually trusted that, stuck around and took those shares. And like they are wealthier beyond their wildest dreams when they were, packaging books at one time. Super cool. It was all about the equity.
Yeah. So any other deals on the horizon right now, or is just kind of you're just kind of thinking through this and trying to get smart on it and learn more?
We're actually looking at another deal with an appliance kind of distribution, sales, and repair type place. That same thing, like a retiring boomer's looking to sell. So I don't have a lot of information on it. It's kind of just come across our desk, and we're doing some investigation and going to check it out and talk to the players here coming up. So that one, if we do that, that will be more of buying the business, not the equity shares. So we're going to maybe try the other side of that. But if it doesn't work out, awesome, because we're learning as we interview and dig into the details and figure it out. So we'll just keep learning forward. It's like the best way to go is persistence, right?
Yeah, that's cool. And it gets back to doing your due diligence and being an investor, not a speculator. Like what you're doing is investing, not speculating, because yes, it could go, the individual investments could go wrong, but when you're using, pooled money from different people, therefore everyone's individual potential loss is lessened a bit. The fact that, you're doing the due diligence here of the businesses that have a track record, you're actually, you're going to West Virginia, right, to review this business soon, like in person, and you're talking to people, like that is investing. And that's the kind of thing that we want to continue to do, and hoping that we can kind of bring some of that into the remnant finance world in 2025. Yeah, what else on the horizon for the business that you see coming up?
I don't know where it's going to go from there. So I'm not exactly sure. Beyond expanding our business, growing our business, do you have something your plate?
Well, just the way what you've been talking about, it does it. Getting back to what people ask us, all right, I have my cash value, I have my IBC policy, it's doing great. What do I do with my cash value now? And we answer that question in one way with our interview with Shane, the turnkey rentals. We're not financial advisors. We'll tell you what we're doing, and this is in that same vein. We're telling you what we're doing, or what Brian is doing in this case, and what's interesting. But how cool would it be if remnant finance clients that want to do something with their cash value, if we were able to set something up where we had our own kind of equity fund, like the way that you have this group there, and we could have contributors. I'm just thinking out loud here, but it'd be cool to kind of bring something like that under the umbrella where people want to invest in projects like this after we get a little bit of proof of concept here, or maybe like your own investor group. Some of you guys are active involved in this and actually doing the research. Some guys just want to put in money and just get paid. Maybe there's some world where you guys open up to outside investors who don't want to be involved but want a lesser return than you're getting, whatever it is. But like, what if people have cash value that they want to use and put to work? It'd be cool if we are able to kind of facilitate that as we learn more about this. I think that's a great way to sort of expand what we offer.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. And I was just thinking about something you said. There's actually I retweeted or whatever you call it now, Cody Sanchez, who I mentioned, who actually does this for a living and teaches people how to buy businesses. And I've been studying a little bit of her stuff. And she says entrepreneurship, 5% idea, 5% timing, 10% talent, 80% not effing stopping is what she tweeted. And it's just like the persistence. And so that's where we're going into this is like, we're not experts. I'm telling you this from the absolute infancy stage of starting to travel down this road. I have so much to learn. And that's what's cool is I'm sharing the experience from a point of mostly ignorance, but I know a little bit, right? I've started to delve into this. We started to work some deals, and 4, 5, 6, 7 deals later, I'll be an expert. And then this is a new model for the way that we utilize IBC and can teach IBC. And part of that persistence is having a persistency of saving that we always talk about. In the first place, to save being your policy, so we can then have capital to do other things with.
Well, that's awesome. It's a good place to wrap up. I think we got some good discussion here, and hopefully your takeaway is just to start thinking about ways to focus on cash flow over net worth if you're not already doing that. If you want to talk about Currence, learn more, sign up, let us know, just send us an email. But yeah, anything else?
No, just please share this, like, subscribe. If you have any ideas, the gentleman in Canada I mentioned does a lot of this type of business. If you're interested in being interviewed, we'd reach out to me. I hope you're still listening. Yeah, just so many good ideas, and it's just a great place to learn and network and find ways to move our capital, man. I'm excited. But like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate it.
All right, y'all.
All right. See you, man.